After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore." Those were the exact words my son's fiancé whispered to Mita night before their wedding. I stayed home the next day, broken. But by noon, the wedding had completely fallen apart. And the reason why left everyone stunned. The night before my son's wedding, I thought I was about to step into the happiest chapter of his life, and maybe the most rewarding one of mine. After all, I had raised him alone for 27 years through sacrifices no one but me would ever understand. I had given up promotions, skipped vacations, and learned to stretch every dollar until it nearly tore apart. Also, my boy, Daniel, could grow up never feeling the weight of what we'd lost when his father walked out. To me, his wedding was not just about him marrying the woman he loved. It was proof that I had done something right, that I had raised a good man despite all odds. At least that's what I told myself. That evening, I stopped by the rehearsal dinner venue to deliver something I'd been working on for weeks. A scrapbook of Daniel's life, from his first steps to his high school graduation, from scraped knees to the day he got accepted into law school. I poured my entire heart into it, wanting his future wife, Jessica, to see just how much love and sacrifice had shaped the man she was about to marry. Jessica met me at the door. She was stunning as always. Perfect hair, perfect dress, perfect smile. But that night, her eyes were colder than I'd ever seen them. "Jessica," I said, holding out the scrapbook. "I made this for Daniel. I thought it might be nice for you two to flip through it together tonight." She didn't even glance at it. Instead, she leaned in close, her voice low enough that no one else could hear. "After tomorrow," she said, her lips curling into the faintest smirk. "You're not part of this family anymore." The words hit me like a fist to the stomach. I blinked, unsure I'd heard her correctly. "Excuse me, you heard me," she whispered. "You've done your part. You raised Daniel. Tomorrow he becomes my husband, my family. And you're just extra baggage. Don't embarrass yourself by clinging on." I stood frozen, clutching the scrapbook like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My throat burned, but no sound came out. She tilted her head, almost amused at my silence. "Honestly, I've tolerated you long enough. Daniel loves you, of course, but love makes people blind. I see you for what you really are, someone who doesn't belong in our future. So do us both a favor. Don't come tomorrow. Spare us all the drama." I should have said something. I should have defended myself. Instead, I felt the weight of years pressing down on me. Years of loneliness, of working double shifts, of pretending I wasn't exhausted just so Daniel wouldn't see how hard life was without his father. And now this woman, the one who claimed to love him, was telling me I was disposable. She patted my arm like I was a child who needed comforting. "Go home, Mrs. Miller, sleep in. Tomorrow will be the best day of our lives, and we don't need you there to ruin it." I didn't remember leaving. I didn't remember driving home. What I do remember is sitting on the edge of my bed that night, staring at Daniel's scrapbook. My hands shook so badly the pages nearly tore. Every picture was a memory of love, sacrifice, and perseverance. And yet tomorrow I was supposed to pretend none of it mattered, that I didn't matter. Tears blurred my vision. But beneath the heartbreak, something else stirred. A cold, quiet anger. I whispered into the dark. If I'm not part of this family after tomorrow, then tomorrow I won't be there at all. And so, the next morning, I stayed home. I thought the wedding would go on without me. I thought Daniel would marry her and I'd be left behind, erased from my own son's story. But by noon that day, the entire city knew. The wedding hadn't happened, and the reason why would change everything. I suppose to anyone looking in from the outside, I was just another overprotective mother who didn't want to let go. That's the label Jessica had carefully painted onto me over the years. But the truth, I never clung to Daniel. I held him up because no one else would. When Daniel's father walked out, he didn't just leave me. He left his son. I'll never forget that night. Daniel was only 7, clutching his toy dinosaur in one hand and asking me, "When is Dad coming home?" I had no answer. Only tears I tried to hide behind forced smiles. From that day on, it was just the two of us. I became the breadwinner, the caretaker, the cheerleader, the disciplinarian. I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria, sometimes coming home so tired I fell asleep in my uniform. But every time Daniel brought home a gold star from school, every time he made me a crooked Mother's Day card, I knew it was worth it. He grew into a man who was kind, intelligent, and ambitious. He studied harder than anyone else I knew. He wanted to be a lawyer, not because of the money, but because he said, "Mom, I want to protect people who can't protect themselves, like you always protected me." That sentence alone carried me through 1,000 sleepless nights. So when he brought Jessica home for the first time 3 years ago, I truly wanted to like her. She was gorgeous, confident, the kind of woman who seemed to light up every room. Daniel was smitten, and I wanted him to be happy. But underneath the charm, I noticed small cracks. She was polite to me in public, but when Daniel left the room, her tone shifted, sharp, dismissive, as though speaking to me was a chore. She never asked about my life, my work, or even Daniel's childhood stories. Instead, she'd steer conversations toward herself, her career in marketing, her glamorous friends, her future plans. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just nervous. Maybe she didn't know how to connect with me. But as time passed, the cracks grew wider. On Daniel's birthday last year, I baked his favorite cake, chocolate fudge with peanut butter frosting. It was our tradition since he was 10. When I brought it out, Jessica smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, how quaint. But Daniel's on a new diet now. I'll make sure he doesn't touch this." She took the knife out of my hand and set the cake aside, untouched. Daniel laughed it off, kissed my cheek, and said, "Thanks, Mom. You didn't have to." But I saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes. He knew I had stayed up half the night making that cake. Still, I swallowed my pride because that's what mothers do. Every time Jessica dismissed me, every time she undermined me, I told myself it didn't matter. She loved Daniel. That was enough. Or so I tried to believe. The engagement should have been my chance to finally feel like I was gaining a daughter, not losing a son. Instead, it only widened the distance between us. Jessica took full control of the wedding planning. I wasn't asked to join a single dress fitting, not one cake tasting, not even the seating chart discussion. When I gently asked if I could help with anything, she gave me a tight smile and said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Miller. We've got it under control. You just show up looking nice, okay?" It stung, but his smile nodded and bit my tongue for Daniel's sake, because that's what I always did. But the truth is, there were warning signs I should never have ignored. Like the way Jessica always seemed more interested in Daniel's potential salary than his dreams. The way she rolled her eyes when he mentioned pro bono work. The way she introduced him at parties. Not as my fiancé Daniel, but as Daniel, the soon-to-be lawyer. Looking back now, I realized she didn't see my son as a man. She saw him as a trophy. And the night before the wedding, when she finally spat those venomous words into my face, every tiny warning sign I had brushed off for years finally made sense. I wasn't losing my son to love. I was losing him to ambition, to greed, to someone who saw me, his mother, as a loose thread that needed cutting out of her perfect little picture. And I let her. I actually let her at least until the next morning when fate decided to intervene in a way none of us could have predicted. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before sunrise. For a moment, my body moved on autopilot, boiling water for coffee, laying out the pale blue dress I had bought months ago, the one Daniel once said, "Mom, that color looks beautiful on you." But then Jessica's words came back like a knife twisting in my gut. "After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from my mug. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the weight of a decision I already knew I'd made. I wasn't going. For the first time in 27 years, I was choosing myself over Daniel. Maybe it was selfish, maybe it was cowardly, but I couldn't bring myself to sit in that church pew, smiling politely while watching him vow his life to a woman who had already erased me from the picture. I placed the scrapbook back in its box and slid it under my bed. He wouldn't see it today. He might never see it. As the morning light spilled into the room, my phone buzzed. Messages from relatives, friends, even Daniel himself. "Mom, we're heading to the venue now. Can't wait to see you." "Where are you?" Everyone's asking. "You're running late, aren't you?" Typical. I turned the phone face down. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, "You're making a mistake." But louder still was the echo of Jessica's smirk. Her dismissive tone, her cruel certainty that I was nothing more than baggage. If that's what she wanted, I'd give it to her. By 9:00, the calls grew more frantic. Daniel left a voicemail, his voice tinged with panic. "Mom, where are you? Jessica says you weren't feeling well last night, but I know that's not true. Please, just call me back. Please." I pressed the phone to my chest, my heart aching. Every instinct screamed to call him, to rush to the church, to be there for the boy I had raised through every storm. But I couldn't. Not this time. At 10, my sister knocked on my door. She lived across town but had driven over in her bridesmaid's dress when she noticed I wasn't at the venue. "Margaret, what on earth are you doing?" she demanded, barging inside. "Everyone's looking for you. The ceremony starts in an hour." I shook my head slowly. "I'm not going." Her jaw dropped. "Not going." "Are you insane? Your only son is getting married." I met her gaze, tears brimming in my eyes. "He's marrying someone who told me to my face that I'm not part of his family anymore. She doesn't want Mether. So why should I go?" My sister's anger faltered, replaced by disbelief. "Jessica said that last night, looked me in the eye and said it." She sank into a chair, speechless. For a long moment, the only sound was the tick of the wall clock. Finally, she whispered, "Oh my God." I nodded. "I won't sit there like a fool pretending I belong." She pressed her hands over her mouth, torn between anger and pity. "But Margaret, if you don't go, people will blame you. They'll say you abandoned your son on his wedding day." I let out a bitter laugh, then let them. "I've been judged my whole life. What's one more?" At 10:45, I watched from my front window as neighbors climbed into their cars, dressed in suits and gowns, heading to the church. My own car keys sat untouched on the counter. I didn't move. When the church bells began to ring at 11, I sat in silence, staring at the scrapbook hidden under my bed. That should have been the end of my story. A mother too broken, too humiliated to stand by her son on the most important day of his life. But by noon, the first call came. It was my sister again, her voice shaking. "Margaret," she whispered. "The wedding, it's not happening." My breath caught. "What do you mean it's not happening?" Her words tumbled out, half choked, half disbelieving. "Jessica, oh, God. Margaret, you need to hear this. You need to sit down." And in that instant, I realized something I never expected. By not showing up, I hadn't ruined the wedding. Jessica had. And their reason why would rock all of us to the core. When my sister's trembling voice came through the phone, I felt my heart stop. "The wedding isn't happening," she repeated, her words sharp with disbelief. "Jessica's been exposed." I gripped the phone tighter. Exposed. Exposed how? "Margaret, it's complicated, but you need to hear this from me before it spreads everywhere." Daniel found out the truth minutes before the ceremony. My knees buckled. I sank onto the couch. "What truth?" She exhaled shakily. "That Jessica's been lying about everything." Later, when I pieced the story together from frantic phone calls, texts, and news that spread like wildfire among the guests, the events unfolded like something out of a bad soap opera. At 10:30, half an hour before the ceremony, Daniel had been waiting nervously in a small side room at the church. His groomsmen tried to calm him down, joking, adjusting his tie, patting him on the back. But then his best man, a childhood friend named Mark, burst in, pale and shaking. "Daniel, you need to see this," Mark said, holding out his phone. On the screen was a series of photos. Jessica, his bride to be wrapped in the arms of another man. The pictures weren't old. They were from 2 weeks ago. Daniel's face drained of color. What is this?" "Her neighbor sent these to me," Mark said, his voice breaking. "He thought you deserved to know before you made the biggest mistake of your life." The man in the photos wasn't a stranger. He was Jessica's boss, the one she'd gushed about endlessly, claiming he was her mentor. Daniel staggered back, his chest heaving. In that moment, the truth he'd been refusing to see came crashing down. The late nights at the office, the secretive texts, the way Jessica always brushed off his concerns with a laugh and a kiss. It was all true. She had been cheating on him. But it wasn't just the affair. As guests began filing into the church, whispers spread like wildfire. Jessica's maid of honor, drunk on nerves and champagne, had let something slip. Jessica hadn't just been unfaithful. She had also been scheming. Her family had pushed her into the engagement because Daniel was on the cusp of a lucrative law career. To them, marriage wasn't about love. It was a transaction, a merger. The prenup Jessica had insisted on drafting wasn't to protect Daniel. It was designed to funnel his future assets into her control. Her father, a businessman with a trail of bankruptcies, had even bragged to a guest that once Jessica married Daniel, our financial troubles will disappear. By the time Daniel stormed into the bridal suite, he was shaking with rage. Jessica, radiant in her gown, turned with a smile. "Sweetheart, are you ready?" He held up the phone. "What the hell is this?" Her face faltered. For the first time, the mask slipped. "That's not what it looks like," she began. "It's exactly what it looks like," Daniel roared. "2 weeks ago with your boss." Her bridesmaids gasped. The room went silent. Jessica's voice turned sharp. "Daniel, listen to me." "No, you listen." His voice broke. "You told my mother she wasn't part of this family. You tried to cut out the one person who's always been there for me. And all this time you were lying to my face." Jessica's cheeks flushed red with fury. "Your mother. Is that what this is about? She's been poisoning you against me from the start. She's jealous, Daniel. She doesn't want to let go." But the words fell flat, because in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. I hadn't needed to poison him against her. She had poisoned herself. By 11:15, the church was in chaos. Guests whispered, gasped, checked their phones as the news rippled through the pews. The pastor tried to restore order, but Daniel walked down the aisle, not with a bride, but with a grim announcement. "There will be no wedding today," he said, his voice shaking but firm. "Jessica has betrayed my trust. This ceremony is canceled." Gasps filled the church. Jessica's parents rose in protest, her mother screeching, "Don't you dare humiliate our daughter like this." But Daniel didn't flinch. She humiliated herself. Jessica, furious, chased after him, screaming about lies and misunderstandings. But the pictures didn't lie. Neither did the whispers of her ulterior motives. By noon, the guests were filing out in stunned silence. Some shook their heads. Some muttered about wasted money and ruined plans. Others whispered sympathy for me, though I hadn't even been there. When my sister finished relaying the story, I sat frozen, the phone pressed to my ear. My heart ached for Daniel, for the heartbreak he didn't deserve. But beneath the sorrow, another feeling bloomed. Vindication. Jessica had told me I wasn't part of the family, and now there was no family for her to claim. I whispered into the phone, almost to myself, she wanted me gone. But she's the one who's gone now. That should have been the end of Jessica's story. But it wasn't, because when people like her lose everything, they don't go quietly. And I was about to find out just how far she and her family were willing to go to claw back what they thought was theirs. For the rest of that day, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives, all calling, texting, sending links to social media posts. The canceled wedding was everywhere. One headline read, "Law student calls off wedding minutes before ceremony after fiancé's secret affair exposed." Another, more venomous post caught my eye. "Mother-in-law sabotages wedding, tears family apart." My stomach dropped. Jessica's family was already rewriting the story. By evening, whispers had spread that I was the reason the wedding never happened, that I'd fed Daniel lies about Jessica, that I had convinced him not to go through with it. It was absurd. Daniel had seen the photos with his own eyes, but lies travel faster than truth, and Jessica's parents were masters of performance. At one point, Jessica herself even went on social media, posting a photo of her in her ruined wedding dress, mascara streaking her cheeks with the caption, "Some people just can't let go." "Some mothers don't know when to stop," the comments flooded in. Strangers offering sympathy, friends demanding to know what kind of mother ruins her son's happiness. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout the truth from the rooftops. But Daniel begged me not to engage. "Mom, don't stoop to her level. Everyone close to us knows what really happened." But the problem was, not everyone close to us knew. Some believed her. Some questioned me outright. Even people I'd known for years asked, "Margaret, did you really tell Daniel not to marry her?" It cut deeper than I expected. After everything I had sacrificed, after everything Jessica had done, I was still the villain in someone else's story, and then things got worse. 2 days later, I received a letter, a legal letter. Jessica's family was threatening to sue me for defamation for emotional damages, even for interference with contractual relations. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. Interference with contractual relations? What did that even mean? I brought it straight to my friend Linda, who worked at a law office downtown. She skimmed it and shook her head. "This is intimidation, Margaret. They're trying to scare you. Interference with contractual relations is just a fancy way of saying you ruined their financial plan, which, by the way, isn't even a legal argument in this case." "Financial plan?" I echoed. Linda set the papers down. "Margaret, didn't you know Jessica's family is bankrupt? Her father lost millions in failed investments. They needed her marriage to Daniel to stabilize their finances. That prenup, it was written to protect them, not Daniel. If he'd signed it, half of everything he earned for the next 10 years. Years would have been siphoned into their accounts." My blood ran cold. So it had never been about love, not even for a second. It was about money, control, security. And when I refused to show up to the wedding, Jessica had taken the perfect opportunity to shift the narrative. She couldn't be seen as the greedy, unfaithful fiancé. So she painted me as the bitter, controlling mother. It was brilliant. Cruel, but brilliant. For the next week, the harassment didn't stop. Anonymous messages flooded Mindbox. Monster, jealous old hag. You ruined your son's life. And Jessica's family, they weren't done. One afternoon, I came home to find Daniel sitting on my couch, his face pale, holding a letter of his own. They're threatening me too, Mom, he said quietly. Jessica's father says if I don't publicly clear her name, he'll drag you into court. He'll ruin you financially. I sank into the chair across from him, my heart pounding. What did you say? Daniel's jaw tightened. I told him to go to hell. But I could see the worry in his eyes. He was fresh out of law school with student loans and a future just beginning. A lawsuit, even a frivolous one, could drain him before his career even started. Mom, he whispered, I don't know how much more of this I can take. They're relentless. I reached across the table and took his hand. 4 years I had carried him through storms. Now he was trying to shield me. But this wasn't a storm we could weather with silence. No, this was war. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I remembered something Jessica had said during one of her smug little tirades months earlier. You don't understand, Mrs. Miller. In this world, perception is everything. People believe what they see. She was right. People believed her because she played the part well. Beautiful. Heartbroken. The victim of a cruel mother-in-law. If perception was her weapon, then I would have to fight back with truth. Not quietly, not politely, but publicly. And I had just the ammunition I needed. Because Jessica's betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was criminal. And once I exposed her family's financial schemes, no amount of crocodile tears would save her. I didn't know it yet. But the next chapter of this battle wouldn't be fought in whispers or gossip. It would be fought in the courtroom. And this time, I wouldn't be silent. For weeks, Jessica's smear campaign continued. Her family pushed their narrative at every turn. I was the bitter mother who couldn't let go. The woman who ruined her son's happiness out of jealousy. It might have worked if not for one thing. The truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. I spent days collecting everything I could. Old emails, screenshots Daniel had saved, copies of the prenup Jessica's father had drafted laced with clauses so predatory it looked more like a business acquisition than a marriage agreement. Linda, my friend at the law office, connected me with a financial investigator. Within a week, we uncovered exactly what Jessica's family had been hiding. A string of bankruptcies, debts, and lawsuits stretching back nearly a decade. They hadn't wanted Jessica to marry Daniel for love. They had wanted his career, his salary, his future, and the prenup. It was their golden ticket. Armed with this, I knew what I had to do. 2 weeks later, Jessica's family hosted a damage control dinner at a fancy hotel downtown. They invited Daniel, claiming it was to talk things over. He begged me not to come. He didn't want me ambushed. But I knew if I didn't face them, they'd never stop. So, I walked into that hotel ballroom wearing the pale blue dress I had bought for the wedding. The dress I never got to wear. Jessica's parents sat at the head of the table, Jessica beside them in a sleek black dress, her smile sharp as a blade. Well, her father said smoothly, look who decided to join us. Mrs. Miller, we were just discussing how to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice steady. You mean the affair or the fraud? Jessica's smile faltered. You're still clinging Tully's. I set a thick folder on the table. Then maybe you can explain these financial records, bankruptcy filings, and this your prenup. Clause 14, subsection 3. In the event of divorce within the first 5 years, 75% of Daniel Miller's income shall be transferred into accounts held jointly by Jessica Hayes and her father, Richard Hayes. Gasps rippled around the table. Even Daniel, who had skimmed the document but never studied it in detail, turned pale. You were planning to gut him, I said coldly. You wanted his future earnings to bail out your family's failures. Jessica's father's face flushed crimson. You have no right to. I have every right. I cut him off because you dragged my name through the mud. You painted me as a jealous, bitter woman, but now everyone will see the truth. You weren't marrying Daniel into your family. You were marrying his bank account. Jessica's eyes narrowed into slits. You wouldn't dare make this public. I leaned forward, my voice low but razor sharp. Watch me. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Jessica tried to insist the photos of her affair were fake. Her father threatened lawsuits. Her mother cried about family unity. But Daniel didn't flinch this time. He stood up, his voice trembling but firm. You lied to me. You lied about loving me, about wanting a life together. All you wanted was money. Jessica reached for his hand, her voice suddenly soft, pleading. Daniel, please. I made mistakes. Yes, but it was you. I wanted you, not your money. But he shook his head. If that were true, you wouldn't have tried to erase my mother. You wouldn't have told her she wasn't part of my family. The room went silent. Jessica froze, realizing her words had come back to haunt her. Her mask cracked completely, desperation spilling through. She's turning you against me. No, Daniel said, his voice breaking. You did that all on your own. That night, I thought the confrontation would end with shouting, with threats, with broken promises. But instead, it ended with Daniel walking out of that hotel, my arm linked through his. Jessica followed, shouting after him, begging, sobbing, swearing it wasn't what it looked like. But for the first time, he didn't look back. By the time we reached the parking lot, Daniel stopped and turned to me. His eyes were red, his face pale, but there was a new strength in his voice. Mom, he whispered, I should have listened to you. I pulled him into my arms, holding him like I had when he was a child. You see it now, I whispered. That's all that matters. But as we drove away, Jessica's words echoed in my mind. You wouldn't dare make this public. She was wrong because if she wanted a war of perception, then perception she would get. And when the truth came out, her carefully crafted facade would crumble beyond repair. In the days after the hotel confrontation, Jessica and her family tried everything. Threats, pleas, promises. Her father sent Daniela mails filled with legal jargon, insisting he was within his rights to pursue damages. Her mother left tearful voicemails begging Daniel to be reasonable. Jessica herself oscillated between rage and desperation, one moment swearing she'd ruin us, the next whispering that she still loved him. But it was too late, because this time the truth wasn't confined to whispers in a ballroom. This time I made sure everyone knew. With Linda's help, I passed the prenup documents and financial records to a journalist who specialized in exposing financial scams. Within a week, the article went live. Behind the canceled wedding, the Hayes family's financial schemes uncovered. The piece was damning. It detailed the bankruptcies, the predatory prenup, even hinted at the affair that sparked the wedding day collapse. For the first time, the world saw the story not from Jessica's tear-streaked Instagram posts, but from the perspective of cold, hard evidence. And suddenly the tide turned. Comments flooded in, not against me but against Jessica. So she wanted his paycheck, not his heart. That poor mother-in-law. Can you imagine being told you're not family after raising your son alone? Jessica's a gold digger, plain and simple. The sympathy that had once been denied me poured in like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Daniel, though heartbroken, found strength in the truth. He threw himself into his new job at a law firm, determined to build a future on his own terms. And for the first time in months, he started to smile again. Not the forced, nervous smile he'd worn with Jessica, but the real one. One night, as we sat on the porch drinking tea, he reached over and squeezed my hand. Mom, he said softly, I don't know how you stayed so strong. She nearly broke me. I looked at him. The boy I had raised, now a man forged by fire because I've been through worse. And because I knew one day you'd see her for who she was. It just took time. His eyes glistened. You were always my family. Always. The phone slipped in my damp hands as my sister's words rattled inside my skull. Jessica's been exposed. I couldn't comprehend it. This woman who had held her composure so tightly, who had smiled at everyone with that flawless, polished charm. What could possibly have happened that would unravel her wedding at the very last moment? Margaret, my sister pressed on, her voice shaking, you should have been here. It was chaos. Absolute chaos. I gripped the armrest of my couch, knuckles white. Tell me, what happened? She drew a sharp breath as though bracing herself. It started just before Daniel was supposed to walk down the aisle. He was in the groom's suite with his best man when someone slipped him an envelope. No one knows who delivered it. Daniel opened it and her voice faltered. And what? I demanded, and inside, there were photos. Dozens of them. Pictures of Jessica, with another man. Dates, times, everything. My stomach dropped. You mean... Yes. My sister didn't let me finish. She wasn't faithful, Margaret. She's been seeing someone else. For months, maybe longer. Daniel saw everything with his own eyes. I clapped a hand over my mouth, bile rising in my throat. The image of Jessica's smug smile from the night before flashed in my mind. After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore. The gall, the audacity. She had been so sure of herself, so ready to discard me like I was nothing, all while hiding a secret that could burn the entire wedding to ash. My sister continued, her words tumbling out in fragments. Daniel confronted her right there before the ceremony. The shouting was so loud we heard it through the doors. Guests were murmuring, wondering what was going on. And then Jessica broke down. She didn't deny it. She tried to twist it, said it didn't mean anything, that she still loved him, that every bride makes mistakes. I let out a strangled laugh. Mistakes? That's what she called it, my sister said bitterly. A mistake repeated over and over with the same man. A mistake with receipts, photographs, proof that no one could argue with. She thought she could cry her way out of it, but Daniel, I've never seen him like that. He was devastated, Margaret. Furious. He threw his ring across the room. I pressed my forehead into my palm, my body trembling. My boy, my sweet loyal boy, how could she do this to him? How could she stand there, smiling at him, smiling at me, all while planning to betray him from the start? My sister's voice dropped lower, trembling with both pity and outrage. He called it off. Right there. He told her he wouldn't marry a liar, a cheater. Guests were gasping. Some tried to intervene, but Daniel wouldn't hear any of it. He walked out, Margaret. He left the church. Right now, no one knows where he is. He's gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. My living room, once so still and suffused with morning light, now felt like a cage pressing in around me. He left? I whispered. Yes, my sister said. No one could stop him. I closed my eyes, tears spilling freely now. My son had gone from a groom on the happiest day of his life to a heartbroken man fleeing from betrayal, all within the span of an hour. And I hadn't been there. Margaret, my sister said gently, you need to come. People are in shock. Half the guests are still here, whispering, speculating. Jessica's locked herself in the bridal suite. Her parents are trying to control the narrative, and Daniel's absence is only making things worse. You should be here, but I couldn't move. My body felt rooted to the couch. Guilt gnawed at me, whispering that if I had been there, if I had stood by him, maybe I could have steadied him. Maybe I could have pulled him into my arms, shielded him from the humiliation. Instead, he had faced it alone, betrayed not only by his bride, but abandoned too by the mother who had promised to always be his anchor. I can't, I murmured. Not now. There was a pause on the line, then a heavy sigh. Margaret, whether you come or not, this isn't over. Jessica's family is furious. They're saying someone set her up, that the photos are fake. They're shouting in the halls. And people are starting to ask why you weren't here. Her words twisted like a knife. Of course they were asking. To them, I was the missing piece, the absent mother who hadn't shown up. They didn't know the truth, that I had been banished before the vows could even be spoken. After she hung up, I sat in the dim room, numb. My phone buzzed again and again, notifications piling up like relentless waves against the shore, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Hours passed in a blur. By late afternoon, my doorbell rang. Reluctantly, I shuffled to the door, half expecting my sister again. Instead, when I opened it, Daniel stood there. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his tie hung loose, his eyes bloodshot. He looked nothing like the groom I had imagined, the radiant man ready to start a new chapter. Instead, he looked like a soldier who had returned from battle, bruised and broken. Mom, he whispered. My breath caught. Daniel. He stepped inside without waiting, collapsing onto the couch as though his legs could no longer hold him. For a long moment we sat in silence, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down. Finally, he broke. She lied to me, Mom, he choked out, his voice cracking. All this time. She made me believe we were building something real. And the whole time, his fists clenched, his shoulders heaving. The whole time she was with someone else. How could she do this? I moved closer, gently taking his hands in mine. I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know why people betray the ones who love them. But I know this isn't your fault. His eyes brimmed with tears. I thought she loved me. I know you did, I said softly, stroking his knuckles. Because you loved her. You gave her your heart, Daniel. That's what makes this hurt so much. But it's also what makes you strong. You're capable of loving fully, even when others aren't. That's not weakness. That's your strength. He broke down then, sobbing into my shoulder, his tall frame shaking like a child again. I held him tightly, rocking him as I had when he was small, whispering soothing words even as my own heart ached with fury and grief. When his sobs subsided, he pulled back, wiping his eyes. I don't know what to do now, he admitted hoarsely. You don't have to know today, I said firmly. Today you grieve, tomorrow you breathe again, and little by little you'll rebuild. He nodded, though his expression was lost, as if staring into a future that had vanished in smoke. But then he looked at me, his gaze heavy with guilt. Mom, I'm sorry, my brow furrowed. Sorry for what? For how Jessica treated you. For not seeing it sooner. For not protecting you from her cruelty. I know she said things. I saw it in the way you avoided her sometimes. And last night, I should have noticed. I should have asked. But I was so focused on today, I didn't realize she was hurting you too. Tears burned in my eyes. Daniel, none of that is your fault. You loved her. You trusted her. That's what people are supposed to do when they commit to each other. You couldn't have known. Still, he shook his head, shame etched into his features. She told me this morning that she thought you weren't coming because you were jealous. Can you believe that? She said you were threatened by her, that you didn't want me to move on. She twisted it into something ugly. And he swallowed hard. I let myself believe her for a moment. I'm so sorry, my chest constricted. She had poisoned him against me even to the end. But hearing him confess, hearing the regret in his voice, I knew that grip had finally been broken. I cupped his cheek, forcing him to meet my eyes. Listen to me. You are my son. Nothing. No words, no lies, no wedding, no betrayal will ever change that. You will always be my family. His lips trembled, and he nodded, leaning into my hand. That evening we sat together in silence, the weight of the day settling around us. The world outside still buzzed with gossip, with whispers and speculation, but in that small living room, it was just us again, mother and son. And though the pain was raw, though the future was uncertain, one thing had become undeniably clear. Jessica's cruelty had not destroyed us. It had revealed something stronger, something unbreakable. But as night fell, and Daniel finally drifted into an exhausted sleep on my couch, a question lingered in the back of my mind. Who had slipped him those photographs? Because while Jessica's betrayal had ended the wedding, someone had ensured the truth came out at the exact moment it mattered most. And that mystery, I suspected, was only beginning. The morning after the disaster, the world outside my window looked deceptively peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, birds chirped, and neighbors bustled about their usual routines. But inside my house, the air felt heavy with the lingering scent of heartbreak. Daniel was still asleep on the couch, his chest rising and falling unevenly. His suit from the day before crumpled and stained with tears. I moved quietly, preparing coffee and eggs the way I used to when he was in high school and had spent nights cramming for exams. Back then, I would find him sprawled over textbooks, ink smudged on his fingers, exhaustion in every line of his face. I had always known how to bring him back from the brink. Food, warmth, patience. Now, years later, the roles hadn't changed as much as I thought they would. He still needed the same care, just for different reasons. When the smell of coffee filled the air, Daniel stirred. His eyes opened slowly, confusion flickering across his face before reality hit him again like a blow. His shoulders sagged. "Morning," I said gently, placing a mug in his hands. He managed a faint nod. "Thanks." His voice was hoarse. I hesitated before sitting beside him. "How are you holding up?" He let out a humorless laugh. "I feel like my entire future got ripped out from under me. Yesterday I woke up thinking I was going to marry the love of my life. Today," his voice cracked, "today I don't even know who she really was." I placed a hand on his knee. You don't have to have answers right now. Just breathe, one step at a time. But as much as I wanted to shield him, the outside world wasn't about to give him space. By mid-morning, the phone calls started again. Reporters sniffing around, distant relatives demanding explanations, friends who hadn't been at the wedding desperate for gossip. Daniel silenced his phone after the third call, his face tight with frustration. Then came the knock at the door. I opened it to find two people standing stiffly on my porch. Jessica's parents. Her mother, pristine in pearls and a tailored blazer, wore an expression carved from stone. Her father loomed beside her, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with indignation. "Mrs. Miller," her mother said coldly. "Is Daniel here?" I stiffened. "Why?" "We need to speak with him," her father cut in. His tone was clipped, businesslike, as though this were a boardroom negotiation rather than the wreckage of two lives. Daniel appeared behind me, still in yesterday's clothes, his hair mussed. "What do you want?" he asked flatly. Her mother's eyes softened in a calculated way, her voice slipping into a tone of gentle persuasion. "Daniel, sweetheart, there's been a misunderstanding. Jessica is devastated. She admits she made mistakes, but don't let outsiders destroy what you two have built. Those photographs, they weren't fake," Daniel snapped. His father-in-law-to-be raised a hand, as though cutting off a subordinate. "Even if they weren't, you don't throw away a marriage over indiscretions. People work through these things. Indiscretions?" Daniel's voice shook with fury. "She lied to me, repeatedly. And you expect me to ignore it just so the wedding could go on for appearances?" Her mother stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Do you have any idea what this has done to our family's reputation?" Guests left in shock, whispers spreading through the community. "We have business partners calling Daniel. Business partners. Do you think anyone will respect us after this circus?" I bristled. "Maybe you should worry less about your reputation and more about why your daughter thought it was acceptable to cheat on the man she promised to marry." Her gaze snapped to me, venom flashing. "You're one to talk. Everyone is already gossiping about why you weren't at the ceremony. A mother abandoning her son on his wedding day? People are saying you sabotaged this, that you planted those photos yourself." The accusation hung in the air like a slap. I went rigid. "How dare you!" But Daniel stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Stop. Don't you dare speak to my mother that way. She had nothing to do with this. Jessica destroyed this on her own." Her parents exchanged a look. A silent conversation between two people used to controlling every situation. Realizing they couldn't sway him, they shifted tactics. "Think carefully, Daniel," her father said darkly. "If you end this, you'll regret it. You'll lose connections, opportunities. Our families were supposed to merge. Do you really want to throw all of that away?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'd rather lose every connection in the world than tie myself to people who value reputation over honesty." "Get out!" For a moment, no one moved. Then, with icy dignity, Jessica's mother turned on her heel, her heels clicking sharply against the porch. Her father followed, muttering under his breath. They didn't look back. When the door shut, Daniel sagged against it, exhaling shakily. "They're unbelievable," I touched his arm. "They were trying to scare you. Don't let them." He gave a small nod, though his eyes still burned with residual anger. But their visit only deepened the gnawing question in both our minds. Who had slipped him that envelope? It hadn't been her parents. They were too desperate to keep the secret buried. It hadn't been me. I hadn't even known. So who had wanted Jessica exposed badly enough to blow up an entire wedding? Over the next week, speculation swirled like wildfire. Some said it was a jealous ex of Jessica's. Others whispered about disgruntled employees from her father's company. A few even suggested Daniel himself had staged it, though that was absurd. Through it all, Daniel retreated into himself, alternating between bursts of anger and long silences. I tried to be his anchor, cooking meals, sitting with him through late-night television, reminding him he wasn't alone. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth about the mysterious envelope was lurking just beyond our reach, waiting to resurface when we least expected it. And then, one evening as I was cleaning the kitchen, Daniel came in holding his phone. His expression was strange, a mix of confusion and dawning realization. "Mom," he said slowly, You're not going to believe this. The guy Jessica was seeing? I think I know who he is. My heart lurched. Who? He swallowed hard, his knuckles white around the phone. It wasn't just anyone. It was someone I know, someone I trusted. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway, frozen like a man caught between disbelief and rage. The glow from his phone screen lit his face, his jaw tight, his eyes wide with something I couldn't immediately name. Daniel? I asked carefully. Who is it? For a moment he didn't answer. He simply stared at the phone, his thumb trembling over the glass as though even holding the evidence felt unbearable. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow, stripped of the warmth I had always known. It's Mark. The name sent a jolt through me. Mark? Your best man, Mark? Daniel nodded stiffly, his throat working as he swallowed. My best friend. The guy I've trusted since middle school. The one who stood next to me yesterday who was supposed to hand me the rings. Him. My stomach churned. You're sure? He turned the screen toward me. There, in damning clarity, were photographs not just of Jessica, but of her with Mark. The angles were intimate, their closeness undeniable. There was no mistaking his familiar profile, the crooked grin I had seen countless times around my dinner table. I pressed a hand to my mouth, horror rising in my chest. Oh my God! Daniel's face twisted with anguish. He was like a brother to me, Mom. I told him everything. He knew how much Jessica meant to me. He listened to me go on and on about her. And the whole time, his voice broke and he slammed the phone down onto the counter. The whole damn time he was with her behind my back. I stepped forward, instinctively reaching for him. Daniel, he jerked away, pacing the length of the kitchen like a caged animal. No wonder he kept making excuses when I asked him to hang out. No wonder he was weirdly quiet every time I brought up the wedding plans. And He stopped abruptly, his fists clenching. I made him my best man. I trusted him with everything. The betrayal in his voice was unbearable. To lose a fiancé was one thing, but to lose a lifelong friend in the same blow, that cut deeper than any knife. I tried to speak, but he wasn't finished. You know what the worst part is? He was standing next to me yesterday, smiling, patting my shoulder, acting like he was proud of me. All while knowing damn well what he'd done. I thought of Mark's easy grin, his effortless charm. He had been in our lives for so long, I had almost considered him a second son. The idea that he could betray Daniel so cruelly felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Daniel finally collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. How do you come back from that? How do you trust anyone after this? I lowered myself into the chair beside him, my heart aching. Not everyone is like them. I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but there are still people who are loyal, who mean what they say. You've just been unlucky enough to give your heart to two people who didn't deserve it. He lifted his head, his eyes red. But why, Mom? Why would he do this? If he wanted her, why didn't he just say something? Why go behind my back? I shook my head slowly. Because people like that don't care about honesty. They want what they want, and they'll destroy anyone in their way to get it. It's not about love, Daniel. It's about selfishness. He stared at me for a long moment, then looked back down at the phone, the incriminating photos still glowing on the screen. I should have known. I should have seen it. No, I said firmly, reaching for his hand. Don't you dare blame yourself. They deceived you, both of them. That's on them, not you. Silence settled between us, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Then Daniel whispered, Who sent me these? Who took these photos? If it wasn't you, and it wasn't anyone in her family, I frowned. Maybe someone who knew? Someone who wanted you to see the truth before you married her? But who? His brow furrowed. Not many people even knew Jessica was cheating. And if they did, why wait until the day of the wedding to expose it? Why not sooner? The questions hung heavy in the air. Whoever had delivered that envelope had timed it perfectly. Too perfectly. It hadn't been a random act of conscience. It felt deliberate, almost strategic. That night, Daniel barely spoke. He sat in the living room, staring at nothing, while I hovered nearby, torn between giving him space and wanting to shield him from every hurtful thought in his head. When he finally went to bed, I stayed awake, the unease gnawing at me. The next day, the fallout began. Whispers spread across town like wildfire. Grocery store clerks, neighbors, even colleagues of Daniel's at the law firm where he worked part-time during school. Everyone seemed to know. The canceled wedding wasn't just gossip. It was a scandal, and like all scandals, it had many versions. Some people claimed Daniel had gotten cold feet. Others insisted Jessica had been framed. And then, inevitably, the ugliest rumor of all surfaced, that I had sabotaged the marriage out of jealousy, planning those photos myself to drive Jessica away. I found out when I went to the corner store to pick up milk. The cashier, a woman I'd known for years, leaned in and whispered, "People are saying you couldn't stand to share him, that you wanted him all to yourself. That's why you didn't show up." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I managed a stiff smile and left without replying, but inside, my chest burned. That evening, I told Daniel. His eyes darkened with fury. "Unbelievable. They think you did this? After everything you've sacrificed for me?" "It doesn't matter what they think," I said, though my voice trembled. "What matters is the truth." But Daniel shook his head. "No, Mom, it does matter. You've been through enough because of Jessica. I won't let them smear you on top of everything else. I'll set the record straight." And he did. The following day, Daniel posted a long, raw message on social media. He laid out the truth in plain words. Jessica had betrayed him. Mark had betrayed him. The photos were real, and his mother had nothing to do with it. The post went viral in our community. Messages of support poured in, but so did venomous replies. Defenders of Jessica, skeptics who demanded proof, acquaintances who thrived on drama. It was messy, but at least the truth was no longer confined to whispers. Still, the question of who had sent the photos haunted us both. 2 nights later, the answer arrived in the most unexpected way. A knock at the door. When I opened it, a young woman stood there. She couldn't have been older than 22, with nervous eyes and a manila envelope clutched against her chest. "Mrs. Miller?" she asked hesitantly. "Yes," I said cautiously. She glanced past me, spotting Daniel on the couch. Her hands shook as she held out the envelope. "I think you should know. I'm the one who sent the pictures." Daniel shot to his feet. "What? Who are you?" Her eyes filled with tears. "My name's Emily, and I'm Mark's girlfriend." Emily stood trembling in the doorway, her knuckles white as she clutched the envelope to her chest. For a moment, neither Daniel nor I spoke. The silence was thick, fragile, as though one wrong word might cause the whole room to shatter. Daniel finally broke it. "You're Mark's girlfriend?" Emily nodded, her chin quivering. "Yes, for almost 2 years. We met in college, and I thought we were serious." The words hit the air like shards of glass. Mark hadn't just betrayed Daniel with Jessica. He'd betrayed her too. Daniel's voice was sharp. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Because I didn't know. Not at first. Mark was good at hiding things. He was always charming, always so confident. I believed every word he told me. But then a few months ago, I noticed little things. Strange messages on his phone, excuses that didn't make sense. At first I thought maybe I was paranoid." She looked down at the envelope in her hands, her fingers tightening around it. "Then one night I followed him. I know it sounds crazy, but I had to know, and that's when I saw him with her. With Jessica." Daniel flinched at the name, his jaw tightening. Emily's tears spilled over. "I thought it was a fling, that maybe it would end. But then I found pictures, selfies of them together, texts he didn't bother to delete. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was in love with her, or at least he thought he was." She pushed the envelope into Daniel's hands. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. "And when I found out about the wedding, I panicked. I couldn't let you marry her, not when I knew the truth." Daniel stared at the envelope as though it were poison. Slowly he opened it and pulled out the photos. More of the same evidence he had seen before, but clearer, more damning. There was no mistaking the intimacy, the way Jessica leaned into Mark like he was hers. His face crumpled. "God." Emily's sobs broke through the tension. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to ruin your life. I couldn't stand by and let you walk into the same trap I fell into. You didn't deserve that." I stepped forward, my heart aching for the girl. She was young, far too young to be carrying such a heavy burden. Gently, I touched her arm. You did the right thing. You saved my son from a lifetime of pain. Daniel's shoulders shook. Though whether from anger or grief, I couldn't tell. He dropped the photos onto the table and buried his face in his hands. So all this time, the two people I trusted most were stabbing me in the back, and I had no idea. Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I know how much it hurts. Believe me, but at least now you know. At least you don't have to spend years wondering why something feels wrong. You're free. The word free echoed in the air, heavy with irony. Freedom didn't feel like liberation. It felt like loss. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot. Why didn't you confront them yourself? Why me? Emily hesitated, then whispered, because I didn't want to face him. Mark, he has a way of twisting things, of making you feel like you're the one who's crazy. I knew if I tried to confront him, he'd manipulate me, or worse. He'd convince me to forgive him. I couldn't risk it, but you needed the truth. And maybe this way, both of us could finally walk away. Daniel's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. He looked at her, really looked at her, and I could see something shift in his eyes. Not love, not yet, but recognition. The recognition of someone else broken by the same betrayal. The room was still again. Then Emily whispered, I didn't just come to explain. I came to warn you. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Warn me? About what? She hesitated, biting her lip. About Mark. He's not just a cheater. He's dangerous. When I found out, when I told him I knew, he got angry. Not just angry, violent. He grabbed my arm so hard I had bruises for weeks. He told me if I ever said a word, I'd regret it. My breath caught. Oh, sweetheart. Emily's hand shook as she lifted her sleeve, revealing faint yellowed marks along her wrist. He thinks he's untouchable. He'll do anything to protect himself. And if he finds out I came here, Daniel's expression hardened into steel, then he'll have to deal with me. The protective edge in his voice made my chest swell with both fear and pride. My son had been broken, yes, but he was also finding strength in the wreckage. Emily's eyes flicked nervously toward the door. I don't know how far he'll go. Just be careful, both of you. We invited her in, made her tea, tried to soothe her trembling hands. She told us more about Mark's lies, his arrogance, the way he bragged about manipulating people. Piece by piece, the image of the man we thought we knew crumbled into something darker, uglier. By the time Emily left, it was late. She promised to keep her distance, but her warning hung in the air long after she was gone. That night, Daniel sat in the living room, staring at the empty fireplace. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. It wasn't just Jessica. It wasn't just Mark. It was everything. My whole life these past few years has been built on lies. I sat beside him, taking his hand. Then maybe it's time to start building something new. Something honest. Something that belongs only to you. His grip tightened around mine, and for the first time since the nightmare began, I saw a flicker of determination in his eyes. But even as hope stirred faintly in my chest, unease lingered. Because Emily's words haunted me. He's dangerous. And in the pit of my stomach, I knew this wasn't over. The days after Emily's visit were uneasy, like the calm before a storm. Daniel tried to focus on moving forward. He buried himself in his work, avoided social media, and kept his phone silenced more often than not. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the restless pacing at night, the way his eyes flicked to the door whenever there was a knock. Mark's shadow hung over us, unspoken but ever present. One evening, just as I was clearing dinner dishes, the storm arrived. A heavy pounding rattled the front door. Not the polite knock of a visitor, but the aggressive thud of someone demanding entry. Daniel froze mid-step, his jaw tightening. Don't, I whispered, placing a hand on his arm. But he shook me off and strode to the door. When he yanked it open, Mark stood there. He looked rougher than I'd ever seen him. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. The confident grin he once wore like armor was gone, replaced by a twisted scowl. Daniel, he sneered. We need to talk. Daniel's voice was like ice. There's nothing to talk about. Mark shoved his way inside before Daniel could stop him. Oh, there's plenty to talk about. Like why you're letting that little liar Emily ruin my life. You think she's telling you the truth? She's crazy, man. Obsessed. She made it all up because she couldn't stand losing me. My stomach churned. The manipulation was so blatant, so rehearsed, that it almost sickened me. Daniel's fists clenched. Cut the act, Mark. I've seen the pictures. I've seen the messages. I know everything. Mark's expression flickered, but only for a second before he forced a laugh. Pictures can be faked. Messages can be edited. You really think I'd do that to you? To my best friend? You already did. Daniel's voice shook, but it wasn't with doubt. It was with rage. You slept with my fiancé. You betrayed me. And now you're standing in my house lying to my face like I'm an idiot. Mark's facade cracked. His grin twisted into something darker. So what if I did? Jessica wanted me, not you. She told me you were boring, predictable, too much of a mama's boy to ever make her happy. You think she was going to spend her life with you? Please. She was using you until something better came along. The words hit like blows. I saw Daniel flinch, his nostrils flaring. But before I could step between them, Mark pressed on. She didn't love you, Daniel. Not the way she loved me. And deep down you knew it. That's why you didn't invite your own mother to the wedding, isn't it? Because she saw the truth before you did. That cut through me like a knife. I opened my mouth to respond, but Daniel spoke first. His voice was low, trembling with controlled fury. You don't get to talk about her. You don't get to talk about Jessica. You don't get to talk about anything. You're nothing to me now, Mark. Nothing. Mark stepped closer, his jaw tight. You think you can just cut me out? After everything we've been through? No. I won't let some girl and some sob story destroy our friendship. Daniel stared at him, incredulous. Friendship? You call this friendship? You betrayed me, Mark. You lied to me for months. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Whatever we had, and it's dead. Mark's face twisted, the mask of charm finally gone. You'll regret this. You'll regret turning on me. I stepped forward then, my voice firm, steady. No, Mark. The only thing Daniel will regret is letting you stay in his life as long as he did. Get out. For a moment I thought he might lash out. His eyes darted between us, wild and furious. But then, with a guttural sound of frustration, he spun on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Silence settled heavy in the house. Daniel's chest heaved, his hands still trembling. I touched his arm gently. You did the right thing. He shook his head, staring at the door. I don't feel like it. I feel empty. That's because you cared, I whispered. Because losing someone you trusted, even someone who betrayed you, still hurts. But the pain means you're human, and it means you can heal. For the first time in weeks, Daniel let me pull him into a hug. He buried his face in my shoulder, and I held him the way I had when he was a boy, promising silently that no matter what else fell apart, I would always be there. The weeks that followed weren't easy. The gossip in town eventually quieted, though not completely. Jessica disappeared from sight, and Mark too, though his name still surfaced now and then in hushed tones. Emily kept her distance, sending the occasional text to let us know she was okay. Daniel focused on rebuilding. He poured himself into his studies, into exercise, into small routines that gave him a sense of control again. Some days were good, others weren't. But slowly, the light returned to his eyes. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he said quietly, You know, Mom, maybe Emily was right. Maybe in a twisted way, I'm lucky. Better to find out now than years down the line. I nodded. Painful as it is, truth is always better than a lifetime of lies. He glanced at me then, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Thank you. For everything. For staying. For fighting for me when I didn't even know I needed it. My throat tightened. Always, Daniel. Always. Months later, I spotted him laughing with Emily outside a cafe. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But there was a gentleness in their exchange. A shared understanding between two people who had been broken by the same betrayal. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope, because though Jessica and Mark had tried to tear us down, they had failed. What remained was stronger. The bond between a mother and son, forged in truth, tempered by fire, and that bond I knew would never be broken.